right. So, hello everyone, and thank you for oh my glasses. Thank you for joining us in our Voices of Liberation podcast. So, for the folks who are new, my name is Fawn Walker Montgomery, and I am the CEO and co-founder for TAG. And TAG is a Black liberation organization. We are located in the greater Pittsburgh area. We primarily focus on the Mon Valley, which is along the Monongahela River. We affectionately call it the Mon Valley. We also do work throughout Allegheny County as well, which is where Pittsburgh is, but our primarily focus is the Mon Valley and other small Black communities because Black people live there and we need to make sure we support them. So the way we take action is TAG has a complaint program where people can call and get assistance with anything that may be going on with them fighting the system. We like to say the police have the system and the people have us. So we answer any questions they may have. We can go to court with them if needed, help with legal fees if we have capacity at the time. But most times people don't hear about those cases. We just work on them very silently. Sometimes they turn into advocacy campaigns. We also have chapters where we have community action plans that people work on. Now we have a very active McKeesport and Duquesne formations within our chapter, and we also have U chapter as well. And we do trainings for the community, and we do monthly events, typically centered around our base building, which is in our chapters. And at the end, I'll just talk about some of our upcoming events that we have going on. And today's topic is going to be about environmental justice and some of the micro, the macro, or just might as well say racism that Black led orgs and Black people who work in environmental justice experience. So I'm going to bring back on my guests. All right. Hello, hello, hello. Everyone is here. So I have some amazing guests, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves before I ask the first question. So I'll start with Brooke because that's who I'm looking at.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Brooke Floyd. I am the Director of Programs at People's Advocacy Institute in Jackson, Mississippi.
Keelan, you go next.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kiam Ansari, and I'm the Executive Director of Valley Cleaner now.
All right. Not last but not least, now. I think she may have frozen again. Just remove her for now. I think that Nair is having some technical difficulties, so we will bring her back on in a minute when she fixes that. All right. So the very first question that I have for you all is: have you ever experienced any micro or macroaggressions working in environmental justice, and how did that show up for you?
I'll jump right in.
Okay.
We we weren't water people until we were water people. I think we were called to this work because we live in this community and we were experiencing water issues like everyone else. And the statement has been made, that we didn't understand the water because we didn't go to school for water. And we didn't have a water degree. But if you consume water, if you drink water, if you bathe in water, then my experience is then you are a water person. And we all need water to survive. So I think the assumption or the thing was that we couldn't speak on it because of who we were, what we look like, where we're from, which is farther from the farthest thing from the truth. And it was implied that we couldn't be activists for it or we couldn't speak out for it, even though these injustices were occurring. And it's not just Jackson. We've connected on this water issue because you're in Pittsburgh and it's all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
It's all over our state. And it usually happens to Black folks, to brown folks, to poor folks, to rural folks, to inner city folks. And so the problem is widespread. And so, this space is usually white, affluent, suburban folks that have money that can speak out. But it's our fight. And we deserve to have a space, and we deserve to have a voice. And so we've seen time and time and again where folks have tried to silence us and keep us quiet. And they have tried every effort to keep us quiet, even trying to pass policies to keep us quiet. And so I think even making laws where we can't protest after we protested every 2 weeks about the water. They then tried to pass a law here
Mm.
that said we couldn't protest on state property within so many feet of state property. And in Jackson, everything is state owned. So that's really hard. And so, yes, we've seen it time and time again. The racism. I don't even call it microaggressions. It's
Right.
macro because they're doing it out loud and in our face. So yes.
Yes. Thank you for that. Wow. I've literally heard that before, several different times. And I was telling everyone before we came on what kind of prompted us to want to do this, is because of the recent experience we had. And I was quite vocal about it. I did a couple lives, um, when we were organizing for the Clarion explosion, and we did rapid response. And um, we were working with some folks that we ended up not working with toward the end because of these aggressions that came out at us. We were told to not, how dare we tell people to get a blood test. We were like, what do you mean? It's like it's fire that happens all the time in Clarion. Is This is just one that got attention, but it happens regularly. These fires probably every 2 months, if not monthly. So we're like, hey, get a blood test just to make sure everything is okay. And the pushback was like, we're not doctors, we're not medical professionals, we can't tell people to get blood tests. And then if we do, we need to ship them to somebody else, like a community healthcare worker or people that they kind of work with. So I hear you fully on, you're not a water expert, so you can't really, give advice, or even, I had somebody telling me once, you can't talk about what is that, PFOB, or that's in the water.
PFAS.
Yeah, but I was like, well, why not? I'm reading just like you're reading, and I'm just trying to let people know that it could possibly be, in the water. So definitely hear you on that one. Q, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, so I just want to say, I definitely echo a lot of the experiences that have just been shared. I'll say, another instance. Well, first of all, about this emergency response, um, I was able to respond with resources for residents in the city of Clareton because we have been working for years to protect and help the residents of the city of Clareton.
Yes.
So this isn't new work for us, and this isn't work that we're doing because of an emergency. This is just what we do,
Right.
period, full stop. So, you know, whenever this happened, of course, we're, on a collective call, we say we need to do something. Obviously, information is still coming in. Let's all meet. We set a time, right? The work gets split up amongst everyone who's willing to actually do the work. The work gets put out, resources get mobilized. I think we responded within 24 hours and had, multiple scheduled events, and resources being pulled.
Hmm.
I personally, when this took place, reached out to my funders to say, I'm not going to be able to speak to you this week, but just know we need more money,
Hmm.
you know? Um, and we get a little bit further in, and now people are upset because we're talking about blood tests. And I do hear what they're saying, about the blood test. The thing that made me upset was that we have doctors, lawyers, professionals who had the same time that we had to respond, but chose to wait until after we had done the work to then sit back on the couch and poo-poo about what isn't being done or said properly. When if they wanted something to be done or said properly, you would have thrown your not name into the hat and got it done, right? So
Mhm.
that's just first and foremost. So there's a lot of that goes on generally in life, right? You have people that do the work, and then you have folks that don't want to do anything that will just sit back and comment on it. So I think like that exists in this space. But then at a higher level,
Mhm.
as I'm doing the emergency response, another like direct microaggression that I experienced was we're on a call talking about the data
Mhm.
of what we found, and we're trying to coordinate media interviews. And so, obviously I'm here, ground zero, because we've been here and have been here and aren't going anywhere. So they're
Mhm.
talking about who's going to meet them downtown, like down in Clariton for this event. Well, of course, they all live outside of the area, so none of them could actually be here, right?
Mhm.
But I'm here. So I'm in the middle of moving air purifiers, working on emergency response. And I'm like, okay, I will stop this, literally physically carrying these things into my office, and I will go over there to go talk to this lady on the news. Um, Now they're up in arms because there needs to be an air quality professional that needs to be with me on this call to talk about what has happened. And they said that directly. Okay, we made sure there's an air quality professional there that's there on the call. And of course, no air quality professional was on the call. There was just, other white, EDs that were on the call with me, but they, are not air quality professionals. It's just another one of these microaggressions. So I think there are like directly things that happen. It's like, how dare you decide to show that you're actually doing the work and have community connections. And I've got to do everything to kind of downplay the fact that you're doing the work, and insert my own importance here. So I think there's definitely a lot of that takes place, and that's just one little example that it happens all the time. So I think, I don't try not to pay much attention to it and
Mhm.
just take it as a sign of strength that I'm obviously doing something right. Because if you don't have any haters, then I guess you're not, being effective. So
Mhm. Mhm. No, thank you for that. Water professionals.
Well, I mean, I feel like it's, I guess, like we freestyling,
Yeah.
chopping it up. Like I feel like it's like a bigger thing of like haters. Like this is just like yet another manifestation of like white supremacy culture. And like what microaggressions or however you or gaslighting or like all these things that impact our communities, especially as a result of a disaster, is like yet another manifestation of like white supremacy culture. Some of that is like, even if you have like basically your skin color trumps every degree that you may have, every experience that you have, like whatever job you got. We've seen this like time and time again. And like before the Flint water crisis, like there wasn't a drinking water crisis. Like lead wasn't even considered a source of contamination in water. Outside of like you had DC that happened in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. That was considered like an isolated incident. And then like because of Flint and like really because a lot of the organizing that happened in Flint, like that really kind of birthed like this whole movement around water rights within the US, even though like this is something that has been happening in people in like communities of color, like in the continent of Africa, South America, India, like long before, for like decades. And, it finally caught up, like in the US. And before I remember like even like when we were coming down and talking about like what was happening with our drinking water. Like it was just somebody was like, no, that ain't your drinking water. That ain't your water. You must put some food coloring in your water. Like that ain't your water. Like you must have pulled out your hair in that water. And so it's like the gaslighting is real, but it's because of like the folks don't they train in a way that they don't accept accountability. And anything related to accountability is an attack. And
Mm-hmm.
so like that may manifest as the fear of accountability manifests as like, oh, I'm crying. And like, and how we've been socialized to protect white women, then everything stops. Like I used to be a racial justice facilitation trainer. And I remember one time it was like this lady who was just like over talking, interrupted, and I was like, "Y'all, like you can't be doing that." And then she started crying, and then everybody like paused to comfort her, and it was a older black woman who was older than me, was the one that was being harmed, and nobody was comforting her. And I was like, "Well, why is everybody comforting the aggressor
Mm-hmm.
instead
Mm-hmm.
of like the victim in this incident?" And then I was like, "No, we gotta pause this because like this is something that happens time and time again, you know." And I would just say that like basically like like the principles of environmental justice isn't necessarily for that's something that like we follow very closely. But with some of this stuff of like respecting like the people who are directly impacted, like the people, or you may hear it in manifesting other types of ideologies and like liberation theology and all this stuff. But it's like the people who are closest to the harm, should be doing the work. And like someone coming in, swooping in the outside, like I got all the answers. This is echoes of white saviorism.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is like that's just what it is, and we need to call it as such.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
And I would like to add, when they do this,
Mhm.
that white savior complex, the dispense or the giving out of the resources during that rapid response or the emergency
Mhm.
response, if you notice, they always dictate how we spend it. Like there's this thing of like, well, what are y'all going to buy? How are you
Mhm.
going to spend it? And these other like white led orgs, when it's like a mass amount of money that is given, and I'm not talking about grants. We know how
Mhm.
grants work. I'm talking about when it's just giving of money for emergency response. There is not this detailed thing of what you're going to do. The money is just given. But with us, it's like, what are you going to buy? How many water bottles are you going to buy? How many Band-Aids? What are you going to use it for? Who is it given to? And it's like this thing of, well, we're going to misuse the money. How are you going to spend it? Are you really going to provide aid? And what are you going to do when time and time and again, we know that like the gross misuse of money, because we're not in power here, the gross misuse of money has always been on the other, by the other team. Like, come on now. And then they dictate this. And then here, overwhelmingly, when we have environmental disasters, when there's a tornado, when there's a hurricane, they will
Mhm.
invariably not, in those large organizations that are overwhelmingly white, they
Mhm.
will not go into the community that is directly harmed, that is black and brown. They will set up camp. The last time we had a horrible tornado, they set up camp in a segregationist academy that was known to be racist. So our folks couldn't even get the resources. They were scared to go there. They were turned away. And so we had to go to a whole nother place
Mhm.
and dispense resources because our folks couldn't even access from the Red Cross and from all these other national orgs to get clothes and food. And so it's constant racism built up in the
Mhm.
Yeah,
disaster response of
yeah,
environmental issues.
yeah. That's what they call like systemic racism. But like this whole notion of like black people don't know how to handle money and like infantilizing black people, like that's been around since Reconstruction. This is something that was like used time and time again um, to perpetuate slavery and like the slavery ideology. And like, and one of the more modern ways of how that manifested in Michigan was, we have a state receivership law called the emergency manager law, that was only implemented in black cities. And it's something that, like, it really undergirded, like, not only the Flint water crisis, but the Detroit bankruptcy, which is the largest municipal bankruptcy in the history of this country, in the city of Detroit, at the time was 92% black. And, Flint is, at the time, like, it may be more black now. It was like 67, 68% black.
Mhm.
But it's this thing of like, oh, black people don't know how to handle their money. So we got to oversee and
Mhm.
make sure that they handle the money properly. And then we got to watchdog them. And by the way, they don't know what they're talking about because they're like little kids. Like, if we don't, like, monitor them constantly, like, we don't know what they're gonna do. And you see, like, this, like, I like looking at history and, like, cart political cartoons. Like, there's
Mhm.
like multiple characters, and you can like see like the same thing of like black people are lazy, like all this stuff. There's so much stuff,
Yeah,
like.
there's so much, and I thank you all for kind of pointing out the way in which this racism shows up, and it affects the way that we're serving our communities, from the constant questioning of our credibility. I'm constantly dealing with, oh, are you qualified to do this for him? Are you qualified to say this? Are you qualified? I'm like, look, I live here. I've lived here my entire life. Of course, I am qualified. I'm an expert of my own pain, and I don't need you to justify that. So the showing up with the constant questioning, definitely the questioning of the funds, and we need a breakdown of what you're going to do with these funds. Like you said, how many how many filters are you going to buy? What filters are you going to give away? And then there's the reporting. Even when they're giving us some of these funds, and we want to know what the people want to say specifically about these things. So when you're giving away the stuff, make sure, I'm like, you ask them. You gave us the funds to be able to provide the rapid response. If you want to know these things, then that's a different contract. That's a different grant. That's something totally different from what we're doing now. So for us, another way it kind of shows up is this, like, expectations on our labor. I mean, just the flat out, no, you'll do it. No, you'll do it. Of course, we're going to do it because we want to serve the people. So it's not like we wake up and say, "Oh yeah, we today we're going to go do this." This is a necessity. The work is out of necessity. When I was in school getting my master's degree, I definitely wasn't thinking about water until I came home and I couldn't drink the water, and it smelled like rotten eggs to this day. And sometimes it comes out orange. Literally to this day, this is how the water is. I've never been able to drink the water. My mother told me when I was little, don't you ever touch that water. You just wash up in it. That's the only thing you ever do in that water. And that's the only thing we've ever done, in the water, because we can't drink the water. So um, the arrogance of folks to question that, with the credibility piece, and with the funds piece. And just as like a follow up question to that is, how has this affected your work, and why is it harmful? So for us, it definitely affects the way that we take community resources. So a lot of, and this happened a lot with the EPA money. Tag never got any of it, but we definitely were called and asked to be the community organization on it, because they needed a community organization to be, um, on the grant. Now I turned down a lot of them because I felt like it was a money grab, and it was just like you were just trying to get the money, but not really actually trying to help people with it. And if the funds are constantly being given to white led orgs or just white people in environmental and climate justice, then we can't help nobody. That's why I feel like it's so important to call this shit out when it happens. I mean, as soon as it happens, and call it what it is, which is flat out racism, because it does affect the way that we're able to help people in their community. And it's basically just flat out white supremacy. and people not understanding how they have internalized it. And then it shows up through the white tears, through the white crying, the white complaints, and it stops us from being able to, have effective programming in the community. Another way, which, and I call it icky because to me it's very icky, when they see us as props or just grant goals. And I can feel that. You can feel that in the room when you're with people and working with people who just see you like that. And they damn near get excited. Like they're like, oh wow, when can we sign this person up? Like, man, we just trying to have an event and maybe give out some political education or maybe give away an air water filter. That's all we're trying to do. But they always kind of take it to that next level with, oh, can we get them to sign up? Can we get them to come to this meeting? Can we get them to come to that meeting? Because they're not seeing us as actual people. They're seeing us as like grant goals and just check boxes. And it feels very icky. And it's very hard sometimes to explain that to maybe newer people who are just, who are coming to become more conscious, and they're like, oh, we want to help. No, Fawn so and so just wants to help. I'm like, you got to be able to look between that, because if the funds weren't here, so and so, wouldn't be here. So what are some ways that you feel like this affects you all's work, and how has it been harmful? Any one of y'all can go first.
Well, I think so for you all are pulled for granting. I think the opposite is for us, because we are vocal, and Black led and woman led, and then because we are seen as, I guess, radical. I don't know. Um, we're in Mississippi, so it's a little. I think that is what kind of. Um, so you are. It's like the status quo, like Black folks, and
Mhm.
then there's
Mhm.
us.
Yeah, I know
And
what you mean.
so we are not um, picked for those things,
Mhm.
and so we're kind of out here on our own. I mean, we are part of coalitions, and we're tasked and asked to help and do all the things, and we carry a lot of the weight. But when it comes to those types of things, we are kind of like, don't touch them in that way. And I think it does make it harder. It makes it harder because, um, we are the ones on the ground a lot of times. We are the ones calling for the convening or calling for the coalition to meet. I am glad that we did not go for the EPA stuff,
Mhm.
because I feel like we were immediately we were under, well, we were already under the gun here statewide, but I think it would have put us even more under the gun nationally than we already are,
Mhm.
because we are directly under attack. Our org is, for statewide, and then now nationally, and then I think it would have brought even more negative attention to us in ways that we cannot fully comprehend at this moment.
Mhm.
And so I feel like, um, and then I think, with the current administration, it would have just been a shit show.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of folks that have applied, and were depending on that funding, unfortunately, have been screwed over.
Mhm.
And we see what is happening. EPA regulations have, gone by the wayside, and we're kind of fending for ourselves. Um, on the other aspect of that, it has shown up in the work that what we've always known, that we are our own saviors in this
Mhm.
work. And we have to fight for what we know is right and build it ourselves. I think getting the larger population to understand that is, what is the core of this work, because a lot of folks, especially here, believe that there is some larger thing that's going to come and help them or save them.
Mhm.
And there is a white is right mentality that still has to be broken
Mm-hmm.
and pushed out of folks' minds. And then there is a, what is that? Straighten up and fly right type of foolishness that has to be, you know, pushed away and gotten rid of, you know. But we're gonna be all right. And I think people need to understand we have to be together to do that.
Mm,
And so we're working on building that momentum. And I think this time is that time where people are like, oh, wait a minute, they're not really going to help us. Oh, wait a minute, there's no one coming. Oh, wait a minute, it's us. It's only us. Those crazy people over there that were saying this all this time were right. Like, so I think that is happening, that reckoning is happening. And so, but all these things have been harmful, but they've always been harmful. It's
yes.
just these folks are able to have the loudest megaphones right now, and so we just have to be louder.
Right, right, right. Um, no, I appreciate that. We're definitely the what do I call us sometimes? I would say like the stepchild org sometimes. um because we are, known to be really radical and really loud when need be. But I love the point that you brought up about with the EPA, we never took any of the people who reached out because we've never taken government funding. So we were like, we're good, and thank goodness that we didn't kind of focus on that. But you pointed out that you've had some experience with other Black people, and I do want to highlight that because it's not always white people doing white supremacy shit. Like that's also us, because we can also internalize white supremacy ideals, and we definitely have, and we definitely cause harm to one another by doing that. I've My credibility has been questioned by other Black people too in this space of EJ and CJ a lot. What do you know about the environment? I've had other Black people ask me these things flat out to my face, and or they'll go and ask for somebody white because they just feel like, oh no, that person they must know more than Fawn. And when we have sometimes we have the same level of experience. So like we have to call that shit out though, even if it is black, white, orange, green, purple. I'm like, hey, that was harmful, and this is why it was harmful. And I call that shit right out on the spot because it affects everything. Because you could be in a totally different meeting, and that same person is in there, and then they're like, oh no, Fawn and Brooke, they really don't know. Like they're just organizers, but they really know anything about water or about the environment, or about global warming. So all of it is harmful, and it, like Nair said, it goes beyond having haters. This shit is extremely harmful. Is it extremely dangerous? And we cannot not say anything about this shit when it happens. This EJ and CJ world is white as fuck, and that's not okay. That's not okay, and it has to be called out. And when they're doing these racist acts, we have to make sure that we're holding folks accountable. So yeah, Nair, how has it affected your work?
Yeah, I hate to keep on going back to principles of environmental justice, but I feel like any organization that does not follow the principles of environmental
Mhm.
justice, they're not an environmental justice organization. You know, like they're just an organization that may do environmental related work, but they're not an environmental justice organization. And like Flint Rising is a C4, so we're ineligible for getting government funds.
Mhm.
But I just want to just talking about a couple things. I remember growing up, my dad will always say, "All money ain't good money," you know, and like when I was like, I wasn't always, like I didn't like come out of school and like jump into nonprofit work. Like I went to a PWI, went to a majority white field, and many times, like even in class, I was the only person of color and the only woman in those classes. And so like I went to a majority white field, which now like is not necessarily, I mean, it's still majority white, but way less than like 20 years ago when I went through it, um, and like when I was transitioning, because I love books, I read this book that, I kind of see reference to like in I would say like almost 20 years since I've read it. Um, it was a book, a collection of essays by the woman of color against violence called "The Revolution Not Be Funded." Like it's something, something that like they kind of came with this analysis of like, they were getting money from the Ford Foundation. They went to include state violence in their analysis, and Ford Foundation, like, it was like, I want my money back, like, um, like, I would say, like, for us as an organization, I mean, at this point, just because of all the organizing, like we have, and the solidarity work, I would say that we have done in both your communities and other communities as well. Like we are the experts on leaded drinking water, so everybody got to come to us. Like if we really wanted to. I remember going to a conference, and even though we weren't on stage, every plenary shouted us out. So that is, a testament to our own work.
Mhm.
But but I would say, like, for me, because I'm the primary fundraiser, if it's like a foundation I think is kind of trashy, like I'm not even gonna like right? Like respond to any LOIs or anything. And that's something I definitely ask, like what is reporting requirements? Like I always ask for that. Just because if it's something like $10,000, you want a 20 page, that like no. No. And the reason why I'm like no is because foundations decide like what those requirements are. Like it is not like they could change that. Like they could totally change that. And also like before the Biden administration, I think some of this stuff is like, environmental justice was not like high on the hierarchy, like they was always like environmental justice was always like the last of the last in the hierarchy. And number one was like always you. But as far as like the funding hierarchy, like environmental justice was last, and there's like even last within like a black community. Um, that's always been a challenge, and just thinking about like for me too is just like one, capitalism will never save us. Black capitalism will definitely never save us because it's just black people doing the extraction, doing the extractive
Yeah.
practices and all of that instead of white faces. And it's like, well, I don't want to be extracted. I don't care if it's a black person or a white person doing the extraction. And to
Yeah.
me, extraction is more than just like the material resources that are like live under the ground. Like it's also people.
Mhm.
Um, in my own definition, when I say like extractive practices, like extracting people, extracting people's knowledge without credit, like what you mentioned, Fawn, like we just want to tokenize folks just to say like, oh, we know some black friends, we know some black organizations. Like that's also like I would categorize firstly as the practices of capitalism,
Mhm.
but yeah, like it's gross no matter who does it.
Mhm.
And like everybody should be like, we not doing that no more. Like just like in my own personal dreams, like some of these trashy people up in Flint, I want them all to just take a date and like collectively retire. Like I think that we should just set a date and just be like, okay, no more of these trashy ass extractive practices, and we just collectively just stop doing it, like, and like because we all grew up under capitalism, like is I always like when I see somebody doing something like that, I always call it out because it's learn a new habit. Unless someone's like time and time again, like I don't care, then they move over to they in the box where they gonna constantly get called out everywhere I go. But for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, it's like practicing accountability because like it's hard work, just like being a community is hard work because
Mm-hmm.
being a community is not just like people. A lot of times people talk about like being a community. It's like, oh, I want somebody to drop everything to come support me. And then it's like, well, where are you dropping anything to support them? And if you don't have a time with that, then you part of the extraction, like because
Mm-hmm.
everybody's time is valuable. I know I kind of rambled towards the end, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Some of the things that you pointed out, how other Black people can internalize white supremacy, and we do play a part in that extraction of our resources, of our mind, of our labor. And then, but until we have conversations like this, the shit will continue. It'll continue to happen. And I thank you all so much for coming on and being so candid. Because if we just push this shit under the rug and don't even address it, it's literally going to continue to happen. And then we'll have people in the communities that we serve, looking at us like you can't know, we can't, because like people are stealing, like they're stealing shit, stealing resources from us. So it's so important that we, have these conversations. Tag has been around for 11 and a half years. The last, I would say, 5, we were intentional about taking up space in EJ. Like, we were just like, you know what? Fuck it. We going to go in and just begin to take up space. So that's literally what we did. Um, and just from that, we've experienced all of this is of racism. Same shit we've dealt with in other fields, but we're not like a single issue org because like we Black and we just can't afford to be a single issue org. We everywhere. We all things justice and shit. So when we came here, it was the same shit. Same things that were coming up. So we're constantly dealing with them, and we know you all are as well. And that's why we kind of wanted to have this, have this discussion. So to close this out, just have, I guess, 2 questions wrapped up into one. So, can you tell us a little bit about the work you do, how people can get involved, and then ways that you address this racism when it occurs? So, I'll go first, and you all can kind of process what I just said. Well, we call this shit out. We constantly call this shit out. We are known for doing that, which is totally fine. I don't care. But we're constantly, and then we do the work. Most times our heads is down and we're doing the work. So that speaks for itself. So people are reaching out all the time because we are out there, because we're in a community. So we do the work, we constantly call it out. We interview our funders. So I had a mentor from the Pittsburgh Foundation, Michelle, and she said, Fawn, you have to date your funders. That's what's that mean? I said, date them. Take them out to lunch. See if there's alignment. See if you're on the same page. And if you're not, then wish them well. And if you are, then that's somebody you can work with. And I will say that I've taken her advice and I've done it, and it's been very helpful. So the funders that we do have are there's alignment there, and I can call them and say these things like flat out to them. And if anything ever occurs, they're on it because there was a conversation beforehand. Like, look, we are a Black liberation organization. That is what we do. We ain't gonna not say the word Black. We ain't gonna not say what we do. So it's been very helpful. I'll be lying if I say it wasn't challenging as a CEO of an org to have to turn down funds. So we've done that as well in the past. It was a principle. It was an integrity thing. So it has to go beyond alignment to a principle alignment place for us to kind of work with. And it's just not funders, it's also partners. It's also partners as well. And we've seen, effed up things happen when we do work with people. So then we just in that relationship. So that's kind of how we've handled it. And just solidarity too. Working with folks like you all, working with the Black Hive, working with InfraBL, and just other Black-led orgs who have that principle alignment. All of that helps. It helps you to stay in the work because it's not easy to stay in the work and constantly deal with this kind of, racism. You're like doing this half the time, trying to get the work done. So those are some of the ways that we address it. So turn it over to you two. But don't forget to tell the folks the work you do, how they can help, how they can reach you all, and then ways you address
Oh, so we how do we address it? We do all the things. So whether we do an op-ed or press conference or protest or just do the work, I think doing the work sometimes speaks to addressing it a lot of times because we're fighting so many battles all at once, and sometimes doing the work helps the most in addressing it. And the work that we do, so we have a lot of violence prevention programs that we're doing out in the community, which I think does a lot to address the things that are happening in Jackson at the moment.
it.
And so our Strong Arms of Mississippi is a credible messenger program. We have our new Jackson Heals program, which is a common justice modeled program, but it's uniquely Jackson. And that is beginning. We also have our new Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma Recovery Mississippi office, which will help those that have experienced violence in the city. And then we have our Mississippi Bail Fund Collective. Then we have our Mississippi Prison Reform Coalition, which is now called Mississippi in Action. And then we have our Community Love Fund, which just helps folks who just need help because they don't have it at the moment. And so it's able to provide resources. And then we have our Help Center, which provides a rapid response and connects folks to needed resources, whatever that may be. And then we have our People's Assemblies. And then, let me see. And then we, of course, have our coalition work, which is our Mississippi Rapid Response Coalition, which responds to environmental disasters, man-made disasters, whatever disaster happens in the state of Mississippi. And we're based here in Jackson, but we go everywhere. And then we have our Jackson Undivided Coalition, which is centered in Jackson, but we recognize that, hey, we're going to have to expand to the whole state because these policies are coming left and right, and they ain't playing with us around education, around criminal justice, around infrastructure, and every damn thing else. And so we do all this work to uplift our folks and to fight the things that are harming us right now. And we recognize it's so vast. And it's going to take all of us to work together. And we recognize that it's not just Jackson, it's not just the state, but it's nationally right now. And unfortunately, what it looks like as a Mississippian is that everything that they have tried to do to us, whether successful or not, that they are now going to implement nationwide. And so a lot of the policies that you are seeing being implied or tried to be done have been done here. And so we know what happens when these things happen, when these things go forward and when they're passed. And we know the damage that it can do. We know what happens when Medicaid is not expanded. We know what happens when you live in a police state. We know what happens when education is taken from you and all the money goes to private schools. We know all these things because we live it. And so we have been fighting and fighting and fighting. And so we know when your voting rights get taken away, what happens and what that looks like. And so we've been fighting and organizing and screaming, and we will continue to do so. And now we just have to get larger and bigger and do all the things. And so we are organizing and making sure that we're doing it together with more and more orgs. And so we have a digital divide here. And so we're making sure that we're connecting with folks to get out the word to all these places that are way far out and don't have the connections. So you can't just post something on social media and think it's going to spread to every little community in Mississippi. You have to actually drive down that dirt road and go on that farm and connect with those folks. So that's the work we do at People's Advocacy Institute. And we have some other things, but if you go to our website, you can surely be connected.
Thank you, Brooke, and thank you for all the work you do as well.
Well, Sunrise is primarily an environmental justice organization. Um, but like I grew up in Michigan, which growing up we were here in Mississippi, which is like a portmanteau Michigan, Mississippi. One, because like there are a lot of Black people, including my own family, like from the Great Migration, migrated up there. Then number two, like a lot of those policies, like very similar policies, in Michigan, like in 1994, like the state through ballot amendment, like passed Proposal A, which opened the door to charter schools and, funded by the DeVos family. That's the reason why Betsy DeVos was the Secretary of Education under the first Trump administration, because all the great work that she did in Michigan for like 20 years prior to that. But that's a random tangent. It's just like when Burke was talking about that, it's like, oh yeah, like safe. But yeah. So like the Flint water crisis really birthed Flint Rising. It was like the aftermath of that. But I've been in these nonprofit streets for a minute. Just because like long before Flint Rising. So I would say like the organizations that we do rock with, like have already been kind of like vetted by me and have like similar like I would say like theory of change, like the base building, like kind of rooted in people, local people. And so like we have kind of like a cadre of folks that we collaborate with. Primarily like our organization works on water justice and drinking water policy. And so a lot of that is like how do we look at the root causes of like the systemic racism and how do we like shift that. So I mean that's manifested in a bunch of different ways, because one of the things like when we were decided that we want to start Flint Rising, we didn't want another flip to happen. Yeah, in these 11 years, like multiple flips have happened since then. And so we do a lot of solidarity work. That is like one of the core principles is like if there's a community that has like lead in drinking water or some other drinking water quality issues, like we may send resources, we may actually go there, like we definitely on a call and help kind of be a thought partner and kind of
Mhm.
share like how we like organize, and some things for people to think through. This is the worst sorority fraternity ever. Like it's like the hazy, and then it's like, oh, now you got a community. Like I think like any type of environmental disaster, like it's like the worst hazing. Um, so and so like we do that. We do work with like some of the big groups, but when we work with them, like we have like a clear kind of like memorandum understanding of like this is what the fuck it is. Like we're not just like willy nilly just rolling with the folks. And I would say some of it may be like very specific folks. Like it may not be like the whole org. So like Natural Resource Defense Council, like NRDC. Like we're not rocking with the full NRDC. Like we're just rocking with the sliver, like the water team and very specific people within that team, like, for instance. Or like so that is something, but it was like as a result of multiple conversations and filling out, and we still do call them out. Like it's not like like for me, like like authentic relations and being a community is like this beloved community that like we all try to aspire and build. It's like how do we how do we make that happen? And so, like, some of the drinking water policy stuff is like state revolving fund, which every state has its money delegated from like the EPA, and like that's like the drinking water is wastewater infrastructure. And so, like, we provide comments, like we do like this education, like we worked on had this big like last year around like the lead and copper rule, the EPA's lead and copper rule. And so we just do like and some opportunistic air quality stuff. Like we had some local stuff around a hot mix asphalt plant, and because it was opportunistic, like we filed like a Title 6 complaint, and so now we're kind of like looped in with like the Title 6 folks, Title 6 Alliance folks. But I would say, and then also like kind of dreaming and scheming of like how do we um like what is our vision for the future like as black people, and that's like what led us to the hive and for BL, like how do we make sure that one like we have something for black people. I used to always joke that one of the reasons Elon Musk want to like have this spaceship to go into space and land on Mars is because they're gonna blow up the planet and leave all the black people, like and sci-fi nerd. I'll be like, where's the black people in space? Like they left us all on Earth to die, and it's like, no, we not gonna die. Like we gonna make, like the paradise that we deserve on Earth. Like we ain't gonna wait until we die to see the paradise. Like we gonna have it here and there, like, and
Yeah.
that's like how I feel.
No, I love that. I love the thing you pointed out about the work you all are doing to, to reimagine and to dream and to think, think about our futures as abolitionists. We're constantly asking ourselves those questions. So I love that you point that out, that is a part of the work, that you all do, especially with one another. And because you have to be able to imagine a different world other than the shit that we living in right now. You have to be able to keep on to your hope, to your dreams. A lot of times we do that, by connecting with our ancestors and making sure that we constantly, have that connection going, especially as abolitionists. So I love that. I love that you pointed that out. Yeah. Thank you all for coming on. I definitely appreciate, like I said, your candidacy and your openness and your honesty. You all can stay on or not. It's totally up to you all during the last part, just where I call talk shit. But I'm just talking about current events. Current events in the advocacy campaigns we are working on. So that's totally up to you all. Um,
I have another meeting, but thank you so much for
okay.
having me.
No problem. Thank
And
you.
let
Thank
me
you.
know any future times because this is a great conversation.
I absolutely will.
Yeah, yeah.
I,
Bring us back. Bring some more folks back so we can continue to chop it up. I love it.
Yes,
yes,
this is
definitely.
awesome.
I
Yes.
Yeah,
definitely will. I want to have something where we talk about Black people and environmental justice, and because I feel like that's always like the last thing that we talk about, but it's
Yes.
connected to everything that we do. So I'll
Yes.
definitely bring y'all back on for
What
that.
did what's his name? Van, that was the environmental person under who was he under? He said black people were the first environmentalist. And so I think there's something to that. And like we have to be brought into these spaces and
Mhm.
share our experiences. And like if you go back, like many of our grandparents, they were it. They did that. They were out, they had gardens, they were telling
Mhm.
us, showing us
Yes.
how to, even the ones that hunted, they used the whole animal. They used the skins, they kept the horns,
Mhm.
they kept everything. And so I don't think people recognize what our families did, what our great grandparents did. Some of us do, but not all of us. And I think it's important for us to tell those stories.
yeah.
Absolutely.
I remember having these conversations with my parents, and like growing up, like they saw it as a sign of poverty, like, and so then when they were like, "Well, we not poor no more," they were like, "Oh, we ain't gotta do that no more," like.
Mhm.
So it's also this whole, this whole thing of like society and the striations of it, because Like growing up, my grandparents did canning, like mostly because of segregation. My parents did canning because they were poor. But then, like when I learned canning, it was like after the economic meltdown in the mid 2000s, and it was a bunch of upper middle class white people doing canning, and they were like, "Oh, we gotta know where our food comes from," and
Mm.
like these whole food restaurants. And Chitlins was like a god awful amount of money in these restaurants. And you like you get a bucket for $7. But anyway, I know you talk about some other stuff. I'm over here rambling.
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. Thank you. I appreciate you all coming on though, but definitely have to have you all come back and talk about that because our connection to the elements, to the water, to the air, to the plants, all of that is so important to EJ and CJ work. This is why we always say it's ancestral to us. So I definitely have to have you back on and talk about that. All right. All right. Thank you so much to my guest. We're going to close out, and I am just going to talk about some current events. So we have our advocacy case for McKeesport. We went to the council meeting. It got a little spicy. I don't think anyone's surprised about that, but it did get a little spicy with myself and some of the council people. But we went there. I signed in to speak, and my point was just to make it known that just because people may not like me, you still need to hold the cops accountable. And also, when people speak up in McKeesport, there's always this retaliation that occurs, which is not okay. So I went there to make that point, and as I was making a point and walking away, their response was, "Well, you gotta look at the mirror and figure out no one likes you." Like that's not even what I was talking about. So we're talking about to holding these police accountable. So they kind of proved the point that we need to hold the officers accountable, regardless of how you feel about me or my org or whatever. That has nothing to do with the fact. So at that meeting, I did say to them that, as I've been saying for months, that I am concerned that these McKeesport police officers are going to seriously harm someone. And we're saying that because the last few months there's been several viral videos of them using excessive force. One involved a 70-year-old black man where they fractured his ribs. That's an issue. That should be an issue for any community. Not to mention the black couple that they harassed when they were getting out of their car in front of their house. There's so many other stories. We had two officers arrested for theft for stealing from the department. One got 17 years probation. None of this is okay, you all. So TAG will continue to beat the drum about our demands. We want the officers terminated. We want a police review board. We want mental health responders to respond with the police. We want the budget defunded by 10% and that money put back into Black communities. We do have our boycott. We're asking people to not work with the city on any community events. When they come, do not let them stuff that camera in your face and take a photo because they're using that to give the impression that they care, that they're actually doing something, which they're not. These police complaints have been going on for years and there's been nothing done about it. It is a huge problem. So that's what we'll continue to beat the drum about that. As far as upcoming events, we have our giveaway Friday. This Friday in Clearton, we're giving away more air and water filters and fans with VCAN and with Dr. Raquel Ford from Clearton, Tina Ford in mom's group. And then VCAN, Keon was on her, but he had a family emergency, so he did have to step away. I wanted to say that, but that is this Friday from 5 to 7 in Clearton. Please come out and join us. It is for Clearton residents only. So you do have to have your proof of residency, just like a piece of mail or an ID, something like that. But the address is 550 Miller Avenue. We'll be right in front of 550 Miller Avenue. And Black Voters Matter is also a partner, and they're giving us a free food truck, and they're bringing their Blackest Bus in America. And we'll have a DJ. So come out this Friday, 5 to 7, 550 Miller Avenue in Clearton. And then September 23rd in Homestead from 4:30 to 7 at the library. That's 510 East 10th Avenue. We are going to have a housing forum on the intersections of the housing issues in the Mon Valley and Pittsburgh. So that is the 23rd. So come on and join us. Um, for current events, we all know what's going on with 47. I'm proud of folks who are resisting and fighting back. Please keep doing that. We need to keep that up. We also need folks to rest and resist. I talk about this a lot, but with the spiritual world and the movement world, how we need to come together and we have to rest, resist, and repeat. Now, something our tag says is organize, mobilize, rest, and repeat. And the elders that I'm working with now says rest, repeat. I'm sorry, rest, resist, and repeat. I completely agree with both of the sayings because we have to be able to do both. We have to rest and we have to resist. And we got to repeat and redo it again. So we have to make sure that we're doing both. We have to continue to resist. We also have to rest. And rest doesn't just mean sleep, right? Rest can mean I'm going to just take a minute, maybe take 5 minutes, have a mindful minute, have a break. Maybe I won't work 12 hours and maybe I'll work my 8. That's what, so it's not always just taking a nap. It is just taking a minute, taking a beat. So make sure we are doing both. Free Palestine, free Congo, free Haiti, free Sudan, free all political prisoners. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. I thought this was a really dope show. And stay tuned for our podcast next month. Peace out. Remember to rest and resist.